I am continuing in my reading. What I'm doing in this series is to read through the entire standard works of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This consists of the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. I am continuing reading in a chronological order, according to event, not according to publication or volume, so I'm skipping around a bit as I move along. We continue again with the Gospels. Christ is in his first Galilean ministry. He has done many miracles. He healed Peter's mother-in-law, cured a leper, cured a paralytic man, cast out unclean spirits, and he's been traveling around the region preaching in all the towns. Now, after he cured the paralytic man, he meets Levi or Matthew, who is a publican, and he calls him to the ministry. That is where we left it. We are now picking this up. This video will again read in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And since this is really just picking up the story, right off the bat, we're following right after the calling of Levi or Matthew. So we're going to go in the same order as our last video. Luke, Mark, Matthew. In this video, we have a Joseph Smith translation. Now, what the Joseph Smith translation is, this is a translation or correction done by Joseph Smith to restore those passages that have been lost or corrupted over the years. So let us first turn to Luke. Chapter 5, verses 33 through 39. And they said unto him, Why do the disciples of John fast often, and make prayers, and likewise the disciples of the Pharisees, but thine eat and drink? And he said unto them, Can ye make the children of the bride chamber fast while the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken away from them, and then shall they fast in those days. And he spake also a parable unto them, No man putteth a piece of a new garment upon an old, if otherwise, then both the new maketh a rent, and the piece that was taken out of the new agreeth not with the old. And no man putteth new wine into old bottles, else the new wine will burst the bottles, and be spilled, and the bottles shall perish. But new wine must be put into new bottles, and both are preserved. No man also, having drunk old wine, straightway desireth new, for he saith, The old is better. There's a couple of things here. First, the complaint of fasting. John's disciples fasted, the Pharisees fast. It is a standard practice under the law of Moses to fast often. So why is it that Christ's disciples don't fast? Well, the answer is simple. Christ is with them. There is a different regulation when you are in the presence of God than when you are not. We'll see this with the Nephites as well. But when Christ is there, certain things are done different ways. When Christ is gone, we go back to the normal, the standard way. But when he's here, then we do things a little differently because we are in the actual presence of God. Now, I'm not going to comment on these parables. Just keep them in mind. New cloth and old garment, new wine and old bottles, or drinking the old wine and not wanting the new. Keep those in mind as we continue. But right now, we look at the Joseph Smith translation for Luke. In 39, it just takes the word prayers and makes it single. So, make prayers or make prayer. In verse 36, this is interesting. And he spake also a parable unto them, No man putteth a piece of a new garment upon an old, if otherwise, then both the new maketh a rent, and the piece that was taken out of the new agreeth not with the old. Very awkward wording. We kind of get what they're talking about, but man, is that hard to read. Joseph Smith translation. And he spake also a parable unto them, saying, No man putteth a piece of new cloth upon an old garment. If so, then the new maketh a rent, and agreeth not with the old. So much easier to read. And we understand the meaning better. I love it. Now in verse 39, we just remove the word straightway. So no man also having drunk old wine straightway desireth new. It's just no man also having drunk old wine desireth new. So again, keep those parables in mind. We will now turn to Mark. And we have in Mark, this is chapter 2, verses 18 through 22. And the disciples of John and of the Pharisees used to fast. And they come and say unto him, Why do the disciples of John and the Pharisees fast, but thy disciples fast not? And Jesus said unto them, Can the children of the bride chamber fast while the bridegroom is with them? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken away from them, and then shall they fast in those days. No man also seweth a piece of new cloth on an old garment, else the new piece that filled it up taketh away from the old, and the rent is made worse. And no man putteth new wine into old bottles, else the new wine doth burst the bottles, and the wine is spilled, and the bottles will be marred. But new wine must be put into new bottles. Really the exact same story. Why do your disciples not fast? Well, because I'm with them. Because Christ is here, we don't need to fast. And then we get the two parables. New cloth in old garment, new wine in old bottles. Remember those parables, but let us turn to the Joseph Smith translation from Mark and see if we get anything new. In verse 18, we just rearranged this. Remember, it said, and the disciples of John and of the Pharisees used to fast, and they come and say unto him. We just take that part and put it at the beginning. So now it's, and they came and said unto him, the disciples of John and of the Pharisees used to fast. And why do the disciples of John and Pharisees fast, but thy disciples fast not? Just rearranges that. Makes it make a little bit more sense, but that's all we have from Mark. That's the only Joseph Smith translation. So now we turn to Matthew. This will be chapter 9, verses 14 through 17. Then came to him the disciples of John, saying, Why do we and the Pharisees fast oft, but thy disciples fast not? And Jesus said unto them, Can the children of the bride chamber mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken from them, and then shall they fast. No man putteth a piece of new cloth unto an old garment, for that which is put in to fill it up taketh from the garment, and the rent is made worse. Neither do men put new wine into old bottles, else the bottles break, and the wine runneth out, and the bottles perish. But they put new wine into new bottles, and both are preserved. The only difference here is that it specifies that this is the disciples of John, meaning John the Baptist. These aren't the Pharisees making this complaint. These are those who were baptized by John, they believe John the Baptist, but they chose not to follow Christ. They are not disciples of Christ. And it goes back to that kind of idea that you can be a disciple of this rabbi and reject that rabbi and you're still good. You're still part of the Jewish tradition. So that's what we have here. I find that interesting. Now, before I talk about these parables, let me look at the Joseph Smith translation of Matthew. In verse 14, instead of then, which is how in King James says, then came to him the disciples of John, it says instead, and while he was thus teaching, there came to him the disciples of John. But then we have this in verse 16. This is a major change. We have this large addition at the beginning of verse 16. Then said the Pharisees unto him, Why will ye not receive us with our baptism, seeing we keep the whole law? But Jesus said unto them, Ye keep not the law. If ye had kept the law, ye would have received me, for I am he that gave the law. I receive not you with your baptism, because it profiteth you nothing. For when that which is new is come, the old is ready to be put away. Then we go in, for no man putteth a piece of new cloth on an old garment. Now that is a major change there. What this is saying, now we let us talk about these parables. That tells us why he is giving these parables. The Pharisees were complaining, we perform our own baptisms. We've been baptizing. Why are our baptisms no good? The same question is asked by many Christians when they come to the church and they're looking at the church doctrine and they ask, why do we need to be rebaptized? I was baptized as a Baptist. I was baptized as a Catholic. Why do I need to be rebaptized in order to join the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? And this is the answer. Because when the new comes in, the old is done away. Christ is restoring the gospel again. This is a new covenant, as it says, as the title is, the New Testament. Everything done under the authority of the old is no longer in effect. You now have to be baptized into the new. Christ is establishing a new church, a new covenant. And as he says, if I'm establishing a new covenant, but I put it in the authority, in the casing or the bottles of the old covenant, then both are destroyed. Neither one has any effect. It must be new in new. And it's the same thing today. Other Christians might have their complaints about it. They often do. But once the church was restored, all previous ordinances became null and void. All those who had been baptized in the old way, they need to be rebaptized. And we actually see this a little bit in the church itself. When they moved to Utah, everybody was again baptized because we had a kind of reformation in the church and things were reorganized, things were redone and revamped. And so everybody was rebaptized because it was a new way and we did away with the old. And that's what these parables are. The new cloth and old garment And the new wine in old bottles, that's what it's talking about. But then remember that in Luke, he added on that those who taste the old wine don't want the new. And what he's talking about here is those who have participated, they've been entrenched, they have been part of the old way. When the new comes, they will reject it. They are the most likely to reject it because they already have their ways, they have their traditions, they have what they want. They don't want the new. They want what they already have, and they say it's better. And we see this in the church. When Wilford Woodruff ended the practice of plural marriage, there was the splinter group became the fundamentalist church because they didn't want the new order. They didn't want the new way of doing things. They wanted to stick with the old. When the priesthood restrictions were lifted in the 70s, many people complained because they wanted the old. They didn't want the new. Many people had their objections and they complained, said, well, you taught this and this is what we believe, this is what our traditions have been. I said, no, do away with it. The old is done away. We are moving into the new. That is what these parables mean. That's what Christ is talking about here. Anyways, people are being very loud out there, so I'm going to end this here. I will see you in the next one.